Oh, actually, before we go into it, I did say we go right into it, so I apologize to the group here. But there were a lot of requests for me to put from about my rank, and I finally put it up on YouTube. So I wanted to throw it and show you a little bit of it here. So I put up some things. So
I'll include that with the posting of the blog.
Yeah, that's fine.
Or posting of the webcast.
Definitely. Well, let me show it here for a second here because I did get this. This is hold on, I'll bring it up here. We call this the Bert the Dog Memorial Backyard Rink, and star-nosed mole habitat, because I ran across so many star-nosed moles that I was interrupting their lives when I was building this thing, so I felt bad about that. So here it is. This is the press box like I talked about before. There's a press box. It's a box that I wrote press on that's outside the rink. But here we go. So this is walking up the path here to the rink, and I found the biggest ass thermometer I could find.
What are the boards made of?
The boards are made of wood, and then there's this white thin plastic stuff that I hammered that I nailed on, that I screwed onto them. Actually, sorry, I should say that is the Flyers bench from the Spectrum. That's what's exciting about that. That actually is the Flyers penalty bench from the Spectrum. So that's the Broad Street Bullies bench. Here we are walking onto the rink. So yeah, the boards are made of that. We have the Canadian and American flags high, flying high. My neighbors are like, "Oh, I didn't know you were from Canada," the other day. Like, nope. But there's this working scoreboard. It's hard to tell, but it actually does work, and it's got a whole 9 yards to it. It's a working scoreboard I picked up out of a used scoreboard place, believe it or not. We have a tiny net on one end because we have this game that we play where we have a 2-on-1 with a tiny net. This is in my backyard. You can see on the other side there's a giant soccer net that's from my house, and this is of course the other side of it. So this is this is my big net.
You're gonna have a fun time taking that apart.
Oh, it's not coming down, man. It's there forever.
If there's no food there, I'll never cover it as press, but I play on it.
Oh yeah, it's nice. It's worth playing on. I chose the blue top of the boards and the yellow bottom to in my homage to Montreal and the Le Colisée, because I always like the blue on the top of the boards, like most other rinks have red. But yeah, there it is. So that's the Buzz the Dog Memorial Rink, 40 by 20 feet.
You know why most of the rinks use the red? It's because they're covering up the blood from the teeth being knocked out after people get hit along the dasher board.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. That's hilarious, and that's probably true. But here I actually had to paint. I painted the posts, just before I did this because there was a lot of what looked like blood on the ice, which is pretty funny.
There's no trapezoid.
No trapezoid.
Marty Booker's not going to play there then.
There's no lines. There's no offside. That's my fake plexiglass up top there. It's not really plexiglass. It just kind of looks like plexiglass up top there, but it just keeps us from keeps shots from going that go over the goalie from taking out our car windows, which are parked behind that. So yeah, that's it. There it is.
Does the puck stay on the rink, or does it fly all over?
Puck stays on the rink most of the time. It does a pretty good job, my kids don't have very strong shots. So we had the first time that I had my friend Eric and his son over who plays real youth hockey, and so we had some really strong. The first time we had really I played with my daughter against those two, and we actually had good speed going on this rink, and it was the first time I had two adults on at the same time to see if the structure would indeed not collapse under the weight of humans. But no, it stood really well. So
if you really want to test the weight, invite Chris Terrian on.
Yeah, I know he is. That's not nice. All right, so it's funny because it's true. All right, here we go. We'll start here. All right, Mike, Russ, then Kevin. Hello, Hockey World. How you doing today? Let me start again because I wasn't on my. There we go. I was on mic when I was saying that. It's like, okay, here we go. We'll start again. Okay. Hello, Hockey World. What's going on? It's February 3rd. It's Tuesday. It's the year of our Lord 2015.
I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.com.
I'm Kevin Allen of USA Today Sports.
And I am Eklund, and you're watching the HockeyBuzzCast on HockeyBuzz.com. We are live now, this instant. Unless you're watching it on delay, of course, in which case, which 95% of you will do. But just know for now that if you were watching it at 1 p.m. Monday through Friday, you probably would be watching it live. And that is the time now. And a little bit after 1. So yeah, so we're here to talk hockey, and it's always nothing starts to show up with a rousing discussion on concussions. So we wanted to start there. Russ, but no, you're right. I mean, Russ did bring up some really interesting concussion points.
Yeah, I basically was watching the Super Bowl and watched Julian Edelman of the Patriots get rocked with a forearm shiver, and he practically got dragged back to the huddle. And I didn't really say all that much to the people I was with, other than I think he's probably concussed. Yeah. But then yesterday online on Twitter, I saw Les Bowen, who also used to cover the Flyers, talk about that, and the fan perception of that was, well, he was okay. He went back to the huddle. And then there was this other perception, well, he was checked, but he wasn't checked because he went back and he stayed in the game, had another play, struggled back up to his feet after another catch, and he might have been checked after all that. We don't know, but now nobody's talking about it. They're afraid to talk about it. It's like sources said this, sources said that. And if you really have people on the sideline that are supposed to be unaffiliated doctors, after that first hit, he should have come out of the game like the Seattle guy Averill came out of the game after the first hit. I see the NHL is doing a little better with that, but I want to just tell fans, just because a guy doesn't seem like he's all that concussed, we don't know what's going on the inside. Even that player doesn't know. And, of course, coaches don't know and don't seem to care in football, that's for sure. But even so, once that brain gets jostled around, these guys need to rest, because it's the time in between the first hit and the second hit that could become even potentially deadly, but definitely could really harm a guy. And he did play right after that and did have more contact after that. And to me, that's a potentially dangerous situation.
Oh, I completely agree. I had to stop playing hockey because of concussions. My daughter's had concussions, and I deal with a girls' soccer team where everyone on the team has had concussions at some point. It feels like it's amazing to me that the NFL is doing what they do. What are your thoughts, Kevin, on this whole process?
Well, it's interesting. I just read a really poignant column from Bob McKenzie this morning about Al Arbor and Stan Mikita going through, issues with dementia. And the column was essentially him reminiscing about in his younger days having, Stan Mikita's stick, and knowing both of these men. He knew Al Arbor when he started covering the NHL. Of course, Al Arbor was the coach of the New York Islanders. And then at the end of the piece, he just said, he posed the question that a lot of us obviously were thinking about. As you see what's going on with Al Arbor and Stan Mikita, you wonder, based on what we've seen with the studies of the brains after they died, of Reg Fleming and Bob Probert and Rick Martin, you wonder what is going on, and whether or not there might be a connection, because obviously, and even Gordie Howe, who's going through some form of dementia as well. The only thing I would say with that regard, because I share Russ's concern about all of this, I think the NHL, and all sports really need to do even more than they're doing, in trying to make awareness of this. Because I think if you enter into the sport, you do so knowing that that this cannot be good for your long-term health. But I was sort of curious, so I went and looked up this morning, and after I read that story, and women, according to some studies, are more apt to get dementia than men, which makes you wonder, because obviously they're not playing in the NHL or the NFL, and I would say that men are more likely, giving the age at which the onset of dementia seems to come. I would say that the men arrive at that age, at least in today's world, not maybe years from now, because women now are more active in sports, more likely to have played sports, contact sports. So, I guess what I'm saying is I don't think we know. I think a doctor told me once that the brain is the last frontier in medical science. It's an area where it's still we need to explore it more. We need to get out there and find out what's going on, and that's what I would say about all of this, is that we need to be certainly more careful than we've been even a year ago or 6 months ago. I mean, I think we've come a long way in the NHL, in my opinion anyway, over the last few years. But there's still we still need to go further down. But you look at the way we treat concussions now as opposed to, even 7 or 8 years ago. It is dramatically different. And the most startling and dramatic quote I've ever heard about concussions comes from Michael Stewart, whose son obviously plays for the Winnipeg Jets. And Michael Stewart is the USA Hockey physician. Basically he is the doctor for USA Hockey in terms of, he's the medical leader. And he said when he deals with players with concussions and they ask him when they would be able to come back, he always says between 2 weeks and never. And he said that he thinks that sort of brings home about how difficult it is to project, because everyone's symptoms are different. Everyone heals differently. Everyone has a different concussion history, and you really just sort of have to wait and see of how it's going to progress. And one of the evils of this situation is sometimes the symptoms do not show themselves until 24 hours later. So I think as Russ said, you've got to be careful and not just to say just because you can come out and count your fingers that you have up and say he doesn't have a concussion.
And sometimes, the players know the detrimental effect that concussions have on their careers. And there was an instance a few years ago when Colby Armstrong was playing with the Maple Leafs and he was concussed, and he tried to fool the medical staff of the Leafs that he wasn't concussed, and just to get back in the game, because at that point he was sort of a borderline player, and like, okay, if I can't get on the ice, my career not is over with, because he played in the NHL after that, but it's going to affect my career, so I need to sort of fake my way through this and get back on the ice. And back in the day that was maybe acceptable, but now with concussion lawsuits, I saw something on Real Sports on HBO about the '85 Bears and how much of an effect it's had on players. Jim McMahon is going through early stage dementia. Dave Duerson killed himself, but he didn't kill himself by putting a bullet in his head. He shot himself in the chest because he wanted to donate his brain to have it analyzed, and they found that it had effects of concussions and things of that nature. So this is something. And professional sports are trying to deal with it, but the protocol that they're following is inexact. The whole thing with the Super Bowl is a perfect illustration. They took Averill into the locker room and wouldn't let him back out for the rest of the game, whereas Edelman, he may have been concussed, but he scored the winning touchdown. So New England, in a way, benefited from him sucking it up and not going to have the doctors look at him.
Yeah, and that just... I even hear journalists talking about it, and we can't say in definite terms, well, you could see that was obviously worse than this one, because you don't know. And that's the thing, and I would never make that distinction anymore, would never make that statement anymore, and I think more journalists need to learn about it, and I wish coaches, or at least NFL coaches, would seem to care about it more, because their answer is always, hey, I don't know, I'm not a doctor. But it's like, really, is that really a default thing? And when you go down the line, if you want to talk about youth concussions, it's horrible. I had a discussion on Facebook about it about a week or two ago, and you should see what parents are going through with their kids getting concussed, and those coaches not being prepared, and no trainers on site. And so this isn't just for pro sports. This is sort of for our youth too. Parents really need to school themselves, and people do.
Oh, I'm a coach. I'm a youth soccer coach, and as part of being a youth soccer coach in Pennsylvania. I coach my son and my daughter. You have to take an online course on concussions every year. It's like a 30-minute video. You watch the video, and it goes through the whole it's one of those bad acted videos like, ouch, my head hurts, like that kind of video. Susie's down again. Just get her back up. Put her back in the game. It's that kind of video. But it does drill the whole thing home. That
even at the youth level, when my wife was a high school coach for almost 2 decades, and in the beginning, the level of training that the trainers had, high school trainers, is far different than the level of training that the modern trainers now have, just in terms of dealing with concussions and knowing the symptoms and having a protocol Like it changed dramatically. And in high school sports, obviously, you have to have a trainer on site. I think the high school, even at the high school level, they're dealing with it much differently than they did. So I think that the awareness has grown pretty dramatically, and I also think family physicians have altered the way they view concussions now, just because there's so much attention that's now being paid to it, and that's a good thing. I think when today's athletes, when they show up, they've heard about it for a while because they've had to deal with it even in the high school level.
I believe that one of the things I've been pushing our team, well, a couple things, and not to get in too far into youth sports, but there are these head things that kids can wear, for concussions. That no one knows how much they stop anything. I mean, for soccer players especially. I mean, not a helmet, but one of the most ridiculous things in the world is that girls lacrosse players don't wear helmets, and that still goes on, and it's just baffling. Like, boy lacrosse players wear helmets, gloves, and shoulder pads. Girls lacrosse players don't wear helmets, shoulder pads, in some cases don't wear gloves. It's incredible. My daughter quit lacrosse because I'm not having you play lacrosse. That it's nuts. I mean, you swing a stick that high in the NHL, you're thrown out of the league. It's just completely bonkers. So there's definitely, between girls and boys, there's a lot of stuff that goes on too, in stuff that still exists. But yeah, there's no question that this is a problem moving forward. And I've been a big proponent of our kids on our team getting like baseline testing done, which I think is something that doesn't happen at the youth line sports, but the youth sports, But there are actually apps on the iPad that you can buy. They're expensive, but they will do a basic, help you with a concussion baseline test. I think it's important if you coach hockey out there, get your kids to do this. Get your kids to do a baseline test, because you don't know. It's so hard to analyze a kid with a concussion. As a coach in the middle of the game, I do know that situation is very tricky. Russ, it's not the easiest thing. Everybody's into the game. Kids get hit all the time. You say, "Are you okay?" I mean, we pull a girl out the second it looks like she got her head hit at all. We pull her right out. But then what do? You look at her. Some kids bounce back. Some kids, get concussions. We had a girl who was out for almost 6 months because she got hit in the nose with a soccer ball. And it was a second concussion, but what she didn't realize is that she had gotten a concussion a couple weeks before in gym. So because those two things happened together, that she's out for 6 months. With the one soccer, but we would never have been playing her, but we had no idea she got hit in gym.
No, sometimes it's tricky, but sometimes you see on a big screen that the guy gets rocked, and then you wonder why he's still in there, and then a play or two later, he's struggling to get to his feet, and he's getting help back to the huddle, and so that's why when I see things like that, I realize we haven't progressed as much as we should have. That's all.
Yeah, we're moving there, but we're not there. I think our kids will have a totally different world. I think there will be a different world of how this is treated. Mike?
No, I was just going to say, I remember that was at the 2003 final when Paul Correa got rocked by, I think it was Scott Stevens. Yep. And then a couple shifts later, he scored a really big goal, and everybody thought, I remember in the moment, everybody was saying, what a phenomenal recovery by Correa and everything like that. But if you look how his career ended, and I believe his career ended because of concussion symptoms.
It did.
Maybe that was one of the contributing factors of him not having a longer career than he should have.
It has to have been. It really has to have been. So I mean, I'm glad you brought it up, Russ. It's so important to talk about it. It's so easy to not think about it until you've had somebody in your life or know somebody who has had it. And when you talk to somebody who, I've worked with a lot of famous musicians who maybe smoked a little too much pot in the day, and you talk to them and they're a little bit hazy. But talk to a concussion person, it's a very similar situation. And if it's somebody and you talking to them, you're and you find yourself asking somebody what's wrong 20 times a day, that you got to really look forward, because it's so small. It's such a small difference. And then when you have a concussion too, like my daughter's gone through this, and I went through this too. Once you have a concussion, every time your head hurts, you think it's a concussion. So that's another thing, because you can't possibly define it, and that's frustrating. And she just had a sinus infection the other day, but she's like, "Oh, I know I have another concussion." I'm like, "No, well, it's a sinus infection." All right, so let's move on. But I really do appreciate this being brought up. I think it's an important public thing as well. Before we get into, I had a little something fun I want to do today. Someone sent me a copy of an article, and I'll put the article out there. I'm getting you three to try to guess the top 5 most productive lines in hockey right now. This is a really interesting article. And by most productive, I'm just going to say goals. And these are lines that have played. And the way this is determined, I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's basically these guys have basically played together the entire year. These lines. On the occasion, they'll shift around or whatever. But
this for this season, Eck?
For this season.
Okay.
And it is so I wanted to I'll give Kevin the first guess here. We'll go age-wise, which would mean Kevin, Russ, and Mike. But
okay.
So Kevin, what do you think? Give me one of them.
I'm going to go with the Getzlaff line.
The Getzlaff line is not on here.
That's hard to believe.
Isn't that hard to believe? I know, it's very strange. I'm not in the. I'll give you a hint here. That according to this, the line production, the lowest has 20 goals in line production for a line. Now,
well, you've got Perry's obviously was hurt, and
right.
So
no Getzlaff. What do you think, Russ?
I'm going to go with the Nash line.
Nash is not on here either. And I guess I'm not quite sure how they determine that again, but it's not according to, and this I was trying to find exactly how they determine it, but they're determining it by goals, line production and goals. That's
okay.
So, the top one has 27 goals. The bottom one on this list has 20. These are lines that play together all the time. But now,
can I have another guess? Oh no, Mike's up. Sorry.
Mike, go ahead.
Taves, Hossa, and Sod in Chicago.
All right, you did get one there. Yep, that's number 3, I believe. Yep, number 3 with 22 goals.
I'm going to go with the Sedins and Rabada.
Sedins are not on this list.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
I know how many goals they have.
I'm going to go with the Stamkos-Callahan connection.
No, they're not on this list.
What?
I mean, no, the production, goals, straight up goals, right? How many
how about Giroux and Voracek?
Not on the list. Nope.
I'm going with Tampa Bay's second line with Johnson and the Russian and
the number 1 line in hockey right now with 27 goals is Andrei Palak, Johnson, and Kucherov. Nikita Kucherov. The number 2. So the number 2 line of the Tampa Bay Lightning is the number 1 line in goal. Number 1 line in production. That tells you something a little about the Tampa Bay Lightning, right? So that's pretty darn impressive. Mike?
Carter, Toffoli, and Pearson?
Nope, not on the list. Russ?
Let's go with the top line for Calgary.
Nope.
I'm going to go with the Detroit line of Tatar. And
Nope, not Detroit.
Is it my turn?
What was that?
Is it my turn?
Yep.
How about Tavares, Opozo, and the Islanders?
Nope.
Oh.
Not here.
What the hell?
Isn't this crazy? This is
the Ovechkin line.
Nope.
I'll go with Pittsburgh's second line.
No.
How about Laterra, Schwartz, and Tarasenko?
Yes. There we go. You got one.
Okay.
Laterra, Schwartz. They are I think they're number 2. No, they're number 3 on this list. Yeah, they're number 3. Number 4 was the other one we get. The Taves line was number 4. Sorry.
Hossa,
Taves was 4. So that was number 3. Tarasenko, Lahara, and Schwartz. Yep, number 3. So we still don't have the 2nd or the 5th. I'll give you a hint. They're 1 from each conference. I'll throw that out there. Russ?
I'll go with the Canadians' first line.
No. Kevin?
Yeah. No.
Sagan's line.
No. Nope. Mike?
Bergeron, Marchand.
Ding. That's number 2. Mike's gotten 3 of these. Yep. Riley Smith, Patrice Bergeron, and Brad Marchand. 24 goals. That's the 2nd best line in the NHL as far as goal production goes.
Wait, but by 24 goals, what do you mean by
5 on 5? This is 5 on 5.
5 on 5, 24 goals. Yeah. 5 on 5, 24 goals. So we have 1 more to go. Do you want me to give it to you guys? Or you want to keep trying?
It's Western Conference, so that
Western Conference. This year, at least.
This year, at least. Okay. How about Forsberg? The Forsberg-Nashville line.
Nope.
Just give it to us.
Andrew Ladd, Brian Little, and Blake Wheeler.
Wow.
20 goals. 5-on-5.
I like that.
Isn't that crazy?
List. That was a good list.
It's a good list.
Yeah.
I thought so too. So
I think what happened is, for one thing, is 5-on-5. That's a whole different animal. So I don't know. We didn't sort of know that until later in the.
Yeah, I should have said that right away.
I got that like halfway through. I'm like, okay, it's like power play goal, because when he said 24 goals, I'm like, okay, wait a second, like Tarasenko's.
But that is something, and so we're looking at a lot of new names on this list, like a lot of players that you don't think of as NHL stars. No Crosby, no Malkin, no Giroux, no Voracek, no Nash. So the review, Palat, Johnson, and Kucherov, number 1, 27 goals. Riley Smith, Bergeron, Marchand, number 2, with 24 goals. Tarasenko, Laterra, and Schwartz, number 3, with 23 goals. Saad, Tays, and Hossa, number 4, with 22 goals. And at number 5 is Andrew Ladd, Little, and Blake Wheeler. Brian Little and Blake Wheeler. Brian Little, one of the most underrated players in the NHL. Does anyone else buy that?
I buy that. I've always liked Little ever since juniors. He's a heads-up guy. He's a smart guy. He's fast. He sort of sneaks behind the defense. He's a great team guy, too. I've always liked him. Always an honest guy in the locker room, too. He's a great quote.
Yeah. And I've always there are moments when you watch him that if you don't watch the Winnipeg Jets a lot and necessarily know, I mean, this is a sad thing to admit, but I don't watch the Winnipeg Jets that much, and I don't necessarily know what number Brian Little is right off the top of my head, right? Probably shouldn't run a website if that's the case, but I don't. So I'm sitting there and I'm watching them play, and it'll be I can't tell you how many times I'm like, wait a second, who's that? And that's Brian Little. You look down, you're like, wait, that's Brian Little. He just does things that do wow you and make you think, holy cow, that guy has got a ton of skill.
Well, two things about that. I think the Atlanta Thrashers, when we think of their history in the league, we think that they did a terrible job of drafting, but obviously Little was one of their success stories, number one. And I think the list you have just brings home, too, how much the power play still impacts the game, the NHL. I mean, you're talking, we're more than halfway through the season, and what was the league's total there, 27?
27.
Yeah, so 27 even strength goals that's an average of 9 per player for the top scoring 5-on-5 line in the league. I mean, that's pretty remarkable when you consider that guys like Nash and Ovechkin are over 30 goals, and Sagan's right up there as well. There's been a lot of scoring, and but the top 5-on-5 lines, are only generating less than a goal per game. 5-on-5.
Isn't that something? And how young is that line too? Like that top line. I was trying to figure out the age of that line. Palat, Johnson, and Kucherov.
Johnson's what, 23, 24?
Well, and it's the all stigma line when you think about it. I mean, Tyler Johnson is a smallish player who wasn't drafted. Palat was late. Yeah, and the Russian kid didn't go as high as he should have because we're afraid to draft Russians high. We don't. Yeah.
Pretty good too. He is.
Yeah, no, I mean, they're all youngsters. Smith, Bergeron, Marchand. Okay, that's Smith is a young guy.
And I'm pretty sure that I know that Palat and Johnson, they played together with Norfolk when they won the AHL championship.
Yeah, they did.
A couple years ago. So there's a long-term connection there. I don't know if Kucherov played with them. I don't even know if he was. I think he was still in Russia at that point. Yeah.
We haven't talked about, and this brings up something, to change topics for a second. This brings up something we should have talked about is the AHL going to California, right? And I don't mean to, I love, part of me, obviously this makes sense. I like when teams, AHL squads are like San Jose situation. I love that. You got to love that for San Jose. You know what? The first thing that comes into my mind, Russ? Okay, San Jose's their same practice facility as the Sharks, right? Their new team's going to have the same practice facility. Well, we saw that with Philly. And the funniest thing would be when a guy would come out of the locker room and basically the Flyers could save cap space by sending him to the right.
Right.
Go to the right and practice over there today. We're going to save some cap space. And then go to the left. And, so basically, if they practice with the AHL team, they get sent down. It was unbelievable.
It was. I can tell you that. Go ahead, Kevin.
Well, it's just such great convenience too, because how many times have we heard the story where you get a guy and he just showed up 5 minutes before the game or at the start of the first period because he's coming from some outpost, and in Detroit, the Grand Rapids is a couple hours plus. So call-ups are relatively easy, and it really does help the team in terms of being able to shuffle people back and forth. And
it makes sense.
It makes
sense, but at the same time, I don't know. I feel bad for some of these AHL cities in a big way. Like, and I mean, some of them are getting ECHL teams, and even if they do get an ECHL team, I still feel like two of them particularly, in Norfolk and Adirondack, are just great AHL cities. I've seen games in these. They're just these are amazing atmospheres. Like I would think about if Hershey lost its team out.
But you know what? I actually think Worcester and Manchester are better. But I will say
that's true too. I mean, you're looking at.
But I'll give you the pluses and minuses too. We actually did 2 segments on this in my upcoming Hockey Prospect show because it is an important thing. So we looked at all kinds of factors, and I felt the same way you did, Eck. At first, I felt bad for those teams that are missing. They're losing their market temporarily because you know how the AHL, they might lose a team now, they might get somebody back a year or two later. And so while that goes on, you say, all right, that kind of stinks. But here's the thing. It's not like the AHL are packing arenas. And we know that NHL teams help them out. So at some point, it does make sense that the AHL makes it convenient, like Kevin said, for the NHL teams out west to actually have their teams playing other teams out west so they can recall guys quicker, because in the cap era, it's become more important. Yeah. My question was on the show that I didn't get a good answer to, and my guess is that I think they'll give it 5 years. And I don't know what you guys think and how long they're going to give this plan for. Is it 5 years, 10 years, life? I mean, I think they'll look at it for 5 years and see if it does well, because as an example, Bakersfield is not a great market. It's not a great market for anything, but it's in the West.
Right. I mean, do you have any impression, Kevin, on how this is going to
Yeah, I don't, but there's nothing more temporary than a permanent minor league solution.
Nice. We have a show title.
We all know from watching the minor leagues through the years that teams come and teams go, and they come back in, and who can forget the IHL? That was played such a prominent role, and then one day we woke up and it was gone. They're still. We're going to have to just watch this and see how it plays out. But I think, if you're trying to sell the game in the United States, you got to get a stronger Western presence. So I think this ultimately is a good thing.
I think this is more about convenience and logistics. I mean, if you use the Leafs and the Sabres as an example, I mean, Toronto had their minor league AHL team in St. John's for a number of years. And they moved them to Toronto, and now it's the situation like you said, Eck, where they're in the same practice facility. And if you want to move Josh Levo from the Leafs to the Marlies, it's go to the rink 1 instead of rink 2.
Right, which really matters.
Right, but. Well, one second, Russ. But the biggest concern, and this was 10 years ago that they moved him from St. John's. There were instances where they tried to get players to call up players, and they could not get a flight because of weather or for other circumstances out of the Maritimes to get to Toronto. Right. Whereas now they're 3 miles down the road. Same thing with Buffalo. They moved they were in Rochester for years. Then they went to Portland, and they had problems getting players when they needed them, and now they're back in Rochester, and it's an hour drive down the 90 to get to Buffalo. So these like when you have Worcester and you have to fly cross continental to San Jose to get a player, or Manchester to Los Angeles. I mean, I don't blame these teams for wanting their players an hour away so they can quickly call them up and send them down.
And I would argue from the players' perspective too. I think you're more apt.
Oh yeah.
To make call-ups when they're just going down the hallway. So if you're in the minor leagues, you got to love this, because I think there's a closer connection. Out of sight is out of mind. and if the GM hasn't been there in a while or the assistant GM, but when you're right down the hallway, or if you're just in the same time zone, you'll go over there more often. So I think if you're a minor league player, this is a good thing as well.
Plus the fans get to see their future stars more, which is a great thing. And that the fans of the team and that was true in Philly with the Phantoms. The Phantoms were fun when the Phantoms were in Philadelphia. That was a fun time for everybody involved. It was great. It was the kind of like the cheaper way to take your kids to see a hockey game. It was still the Spectrum, which I'm still so pissed that they tore the Spectrum down and that they moved the Phantoms out of there. Just to add more parking, basically. It's just like, it's one of those things that just bothers you. I know the whole building was falling apart, but I know there's all the levels to it, but I'm just going to be shallow and say that I'm pissed that they moved them out of there, because that just really bothers me. Because it was just a great environment, and, I saw the Phantoms win a Calder Cup, it was just, and that was in the new building, I guess, but that year of the lockout, I would take that year of the lockout.
Building, I covered it.
Yeah, remember that? I didn't cover it. I wasn't doing it yet.
Yeah.
I wasn't doing it yet, but I covered my. I took my daughter to the, we would sit right on the glass for $30 a piece, and that's how she got into hockey. She was young, and it was.
Well, I think also part of this is part of the American Hockey League sort of business model right now. I mean, right now you have teams like Toronto can afford to travel to the West and play these games in Texas. So they're in the Western Conference of the AHL, whereas now I think you have enough teams out west that you're going to have a Western Conference that are actually teams in the West.
Yeah, that's definitely playing.
So the Texas teams and the California teams will play each other. It'll cut down on travel costs, and maybe they have one road trip, sort of like a National League, American League type of thing, where they play the other conference once, and the other conference comes to your barn once. But now Toronto plays Rochester, Utica, Syracuse, all these teams more, and that I think that works for everybody in terms of cutting down costs and keeping your players close. So I think and I think there'll probably be more teams that move out west. I don't know if it'll work long term, but I think it's going to happen.
Russ, what's your favorite age? I'm sorry, Russ, go ahead.
I was going to say there's going to be more fixes, because again, you go look at that AHL map that they have, and St. John's is close to nothing. I remember talking to Eck about Rob Zepp getting into the Flyers game about a week ago, and he was going to have to make this 2-day trek just to get back because he was starting that night. And he made it, but sometimes you don't make it based on weather. And then, go look at the Stingrays. They're close to nobody now. I mean, now they're out in the middle of nowhere. So in Carolina, and it's like, at some point you got to sort of reshuffle the deck. And there's a lot of empty rinks around the world and the country that you could put these teams in, and so some of them are going to get deoccupied, for a better word. They're going to get vacated, and then other teams are going to get teams back. I mean, I think that's what's going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, I agree, and ECHL is good hockey too. I mean, it is fun hockey. I mean, it really is. My first minor league game I ever saw was not my first ECHL game I saw was the Nashville Knights in Nashville, Tennessee. Before the Predators existed, and they were actually building the stadium at the time. And I saw a couple Knights games while I was down there recording an album. I still have a Knights jersey over there hanging on the wall from their final game ever, number 19, whoever that was. I saw Ryan Sittler play against them that night. So it was funny to see these different teams, and that building was part of my love of Nashville hockey came from them, because that building was raucous. It was crazy. It was fun. It was small, but it was fun. Mike?
But even in that situation, the teams are trying to keep their ECHL teams within reasonable distance. Buffalo's ECHL team is in Elmira, so it's Elmira to Rochester to Buffalo. Toronto's is in Orlando, which is a flight away, and they can afford that. But I think there's that sort of model that I think a lot of teams are going to try to follow.
Well, the ECHL still has an important role, because you need a place to put your goalies.
Right.
You put two goalies in your AHL affiliate, but you need somewhere else in pro hockey to put them, and they still play a significant role.
What's interesting is I talked to, I'll move on after this, but I talked a lot to one of my favorite guys, which is Bruce Scoop Cooper from the Flyers, who is one of the historians who's been around forever, and he's a great guy to talk to. And he often talks about the AHL, and how in the old days, like when Hershey on AHL team, they've been there for forever. But there was a time when players wouldn't leave AHL teams to play for the NHL teams because they didn't want to move. It was more convenient to live there.
Johnny Gower played in the AHL forever. They were making more money than the NHL for a while. We got to remember that too.
Right.
He didn't want to leave Cleveland. He did not.
And if you're raising your family in Hershey and you're going to go for another $10,000 a year to someplace in the NHL, why would you do that? Even back then, it just didn't make sense. So, all right. So moving on, I wanted to show you the new Sharks jerseys that they're revealing. This is pretty funny. I like this. I thought this was good.
Did Katy Perry design that?
Believe this is real. This was sent to me. I don't think this is real. I think this is a takeoff of the Dancing Sharks from the Katy Perry thing. But yeah.
For one thing, if it was real, the shark would be wearing skates.
That's right. Was there anything better than the Dancing Sharks, though? Let's just throw that out there.
I didn't watch it. I watched Puppy Bowl. Thanks.
Russ, we'll talk later about the Puppy Bowl and how the scoring has gotten out of hand. But yeah,
I saw the Dancing Sharks. I didn't get. I know one of them was a little out of sync, but it was. I'm sorry. I was concentrating on the singer.
Yeah, the Dancing Sharks were awesome, and I don't know. Anyway, we've gotten a little bit off the rails. Sorry.
Yeah.
Shattenkirk. Let's move back to one of our favorite astronauts from the '60s. Shattenkirk is injured, unfortunately. Mike, what's going on here?
Well, he is planning to have surgery. It's an abdominal injury. The surgery will be within 7 to 10 days, and it's described as week to week. So it's not something that they think is going to be a quick. Otherwise it would be a day-to-day description.
Yeah.
But week to week is pretty open to interpretation, and if it's a long-term injury, then I would think that St. Louis might be in the market for a defenseman, adding a defenseman before the deadline.
That's so much depth. But yeah, I do agree. I mean, everything in the Western. Kevin, do you think this is going to change their path?
Well, again, we're operating here without as much information as they have, but we still have 10 weeks to go before the postseason, or roughly, I think. We got all of February and March and part of April. So that's 2.5 months. I guess it would just depend on what the injury is. But they've got some room to operate, and they've got a team that's a quality team that with a real chance to win. I think you don't want to be in a position where you are telling yourself in the summer, well, Shattenkirk's injury cost us. So if that's the case, I think you got to be aggressive. And more importantly, as we all know, there are a lot of defensemen out there. More than you see in this type of situation. There's a shortage of scoring forwards, but there are defensemen out there who can fill in and help a team. So, but the problem is that Shattenkirk obviously is the number one scoring defenseman in terms of, and he is crucial for a very high scoring Blues team.
I mean, I don't think they're going to have to go out and try to trade for, the top guys like Green or Sekera or Franzen or any of those guys. But I think with the uncertainty of an injury, I mean, it lends Doug Armstrong to probably want to go out and get a little insurance, maybe like they did a couple years ago when they picked up Jordan Leopold from Buffalo. Just a veteran guy who's not too expensive, but can give them ice time if they need it, if Shattenkirk is slower to return. I mean, they're going to make the playoffs
again.
What's that?
And he's available again. So
yeah.
I get Del Zotto. I mean, if I'm St. Louis, that's who I'm getting.
Yeah.
I thought they wanted a defenseman.
Yeah.
Have you watched him play? His defense has been better this year than most years.
He really has. He's gotten really, and he's so fast. He makes up for a lot of his errors with his speed. I mean, he can get back really quickly. But yeah, and I know Hitchcock has been through this before, where he does not like going in without a ton of defensemen. That's why I do think it does change. I do think it changes the path for the Blues slightly, but and into the situation where you get one of these type guys, because those guys, there's no shortage of them at all.
Chris Russell's played for every Hitchcock team, right? So might as well get him.
Right? Why not? Right? Oh, I know. There are so many. I mean, and Chris Stewart's playing better. Not not a defenseman, but someone texted me earlier today that's heating up. Chris Stewart. He's playing better now. But who I wanted to talk to in terms of players. There was an interesting quote last night from Zach Cashin. Did you read this quote? This is a good one.
No.
Let me get to this one here. It's got here. This is from Elliot Papp of the Vancouver Sun, talking to Zach Cashin, who has been a healthy scratch in 3 of the last 7 games. He says, "I don't even know what the hell is going on," said Cashin, who hadn't scored a goal in 21 games. "I thought I played well against Anaheim. I took a bad penalty, but I was playing with emotion, and I was trying to do the right thing. I played a good game against Buffalo, and then that happens. So honestly, I can't tell you. I don't know. I was, if not more shocked than anyone." And then, of course, someone asked the question, which was absolutely ridiculous: "Is this frustrating, Zach?" And then Zach said, "Am I frustrated? Question mark. You guys have no idea how effing frustrated I am. But that's the way it is. I'm not going to sit here and sulk. I just have to find a way. It's no secret I need to start scoring goals, and I need to be more consistent. I have 2 goals this year. I came in and I have high expectations. It's tough to score when you're riding the bike." So, yeah, this is a player who sounds like he's on his way out.
Yeah, book the one-way ticket.
Yeah.
When you start talking like that.
You know, the guy does have some skill, and like I said, when he played with the Sedins, he did put up some goals. Now, of course, part of that was because of the Sedins, but also part of that was because he was creating time and space. If you did manage to put him with the right guys, he can put points up for you. He can. And so I think there is a team out there for him.
Yeah, but he has and he has throughout his junior career and throughout his NHL career had a propensity for taking stupid penalties. He's not a well-disciplined player, and I think he's young still, and maybe a team that can allow him to grow and mature. It would be interested in bringing him in because he's what is he, 24, 23, 24 years old?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The rumor I heard this morning that I haven't written about yet, but because I was trying to pick it up from somebody else too, but I'll just throw this out there. We'll show it as speculation for now, because it's not a source I would necessarily go with. But he had said Hansel for Cash. So basically, they can get out of Phoenix. Would Phoenix be a good place for Cashin? I think it would be, Kev.
Yeah. Well, yeah, absolutely. I don't know that I'd give Hansel up for him.
Right.
But I think bringing in a project like him, makes sense for a resetting team like Phoenix. There's no doubt about that. So, because there's a lot of untapped potential there. Even though he has a history that Mike pointed out, there is a lot of potential. He could be a power forward. He's still young enough that he could still do that, and he's had spurts when he's looked like a very effective player. So, if the price is right, and I was the Coyotes, I would do that. Just not Hansel. I think you're going to trade Hansel. You got to get more than that.
Hansel's the guy. One of the guys that Don Maloney shouldn't want to give up. I mean, I don't think that they're actively shopping Ekman Larson in spite of the report over the weekend. I mean, like we said yesterday, that might have been just an error in Don Maloney, expressing his frustration. But I can't see moving. Hansel's a big center, has got skill. He's a good two-way. I mean, this is the kind of guy you keep. This is not, and you build around. This is not the guy you dispose of. You trade Vermette because you're probably going to lose him anyway. You trade Yandel because he's probably going to walk at the end of next year. You don't trade guys like Hansel, and you don't trade guys like Ekman Larson.
Yeah, I think a lot of fans misinterpreted when Maloney was sort of saying that they're going to be sellers, thinking everybody's really available. Everybody's really not available. No one's trading Oliver Ekman Larson. It's just not going to happen. I mean, and yes, Keith Yandel, he'll probably get traded, and Vermette will probably get traded. But you're right, other core guys, they have new ownership. They're not just going to strip mine this team. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, it's a changing environment, Russ. I agree with you there. And let's talk about let's go to the rumor chart for 3 guys today. Three of the goodies, but oldies but goodies. Thomas Fleischmann, Louis Harrison, and Martin Erat. So Fleischmann we've discussed before, but things have changed a little bit. That's why I wanted to bring it up. Is that I heard Nashville more connected with Fleischmann than I had prior. So I increased that list a little bit. Let me make it a little smaller. But Fleischmann's he's going to find a home. I think he's going to be out of there. It really sounds like he's going to be traded at this point. And the Blues, the Blackhawks were an interesting. The Blackhawks have not been in many rumors. When I've talked to people, the Blackhawks aren't going to do much. This is one of the few times anybody has ever mentioned to me that they would be interested in something. But the Blackhawks do have a history of trading with the Panthers, and that we've seen that before. So that's why I gave it at least a 10% there. Lou Erickson, the Jets keep coming up, and this would have to be in conjunction with something else, obviously, but for the most part, I think he's sticking in Boston. But the Jets have given up 5 goals in each of their last, I think, 5 games or 4 or 5 games. The Jets are suddenly not able to keep the puck out of the net. Right now, they're struggling. And then finally, Erat, who I heard tied to Columbus. Now that's like a long-term thing, because Columbus obviously is not a playoff team right now, so a bit surprising. But Boston also has some interest there too. So
yeah, I mean, if Columbus truly wanted Erat, they can just wait till July and sign him as a free agent. So
Yeah.
Right. No, I agree with that. I agree, but you wonder sometimes there's other aspects to this, So, but what are your thoughts on some of these, Kev?
Well, Fleischmann I like a lot, and the fact that the Panthers are slipping away gives more credence to the probability that he would be, moved out. And with what's going on there in Florida, where they're building around the good defensive game and the goalie and stuff, they really need to find a way to create more offense. And he's had an off season, obviously, and I think he would reinvent himself. He can be a skillful player. I mean, he is a skillful player, but I mean, he can be an effective player given the right circumstances. And the Predators, I think, would be a great fit. I don't see the Red Wings as being part of it. I don't think they're going to go after a forward. I think they're happy with their forward group, and that would just create more problems with their deal.
Well, that's the Chicago-Florida connection. I mean, the one concern. I mean, and this is a concern for everybody. Trading for Fleischmann is his cap hit is $4.5 million. Now, Florida can retain up to half of that, and they might have to if they're going to trade him to a contending team, because I don't think there are many contending teams out there that can fit $4.5 million prorated for the rest of the season. So there might, and they've done that before. They did it with the Versteeg deal a couple years ago.
Yeah, they did. That didn't work out very well for them. But the Islanders are another team I've been trying to find somebody to tell me. I've been talking to people that doesn't make sense. The Islanders will go after Thomas Fleischmann, but everyone has said no. So, but Russ, what are your thoughts?
Well, I don't think you'll ever get a rumor out of the Islanders because Garth doesn't really talk to anybody.
Oh yeah, no, you'll never get it out of the Islanders.
You'll never get a real rumor out of the Islanders. I think that's the one thing. I don't know about Fleischmann to the Islanders. I mean, I think the Islanders would really be looking for another defenseman. They have, injuries on the blue line. I think that's really what they'd be focusing on. So I think maybe that's why you're not hearing a rumor with Fleischmann.
Yeah.
I think Fleischmann does fit well with Nashville. I think Laviolette could do something with him. Erickson to the Jets would be great for the Jets. They definitely need a shot in the arm, and he would actually play a better role in Winnipeg than he does in Boston. It might not be so lost. And so I think Erickson there makes a lot of sense, and I think Erat makes a lot of sense going to a few places. I don't think Columbus, though. I don't think that. But I think he'll go somewhere. Ottawa, I don't even know about Ottawa if it makes any sense. But I could see Erat possibly going to Boston, especially if they did move Erickson for something else and they wanted to sort of just replace a player. He would be a good guy you could plug in.
Russ, let me ask you about the Islanders. They don't have their first. I probably would think that they wouldn't be trading. I think they traded their second in the Boychuk deal. So if they're looking to add something at the deadline, would they consider moving out a prospect like a Griffin Reinhart or somebody like that who hasn't made the NHL yet, who they're starting to sour on?
No, I don't think they're souring on him. I think they're just being cautious. I think Reinhart should still get a chance to make that team again late in the season, but I think they're just being cautious. I don't think they would move him. I really don't. I don't know if they would really move any of their young prospects, to be honest. I think that's where you're going to have a problem with the Islanders wanting to make a deal, because Snow has been really hesitant in trading those guys. I mean, he did trade Ville Polka, so nothing's impossible, but I don't think he would trade Griffin Reinhart. I'd really be shocked at that. Would he trade Michael Dal Cole? Maybe. As much as I like Dal Cole and the rest of the world likes Dal Cole, you never know. I mean, if the Islanders sort of get this edict, like they have to go far, they think they're going to be a cup team, then you could see a bigger trade with someone like Dal Cole in it, perhaps.
Right.
There's no chance they're trading Griffin Reinhart. Zero. And I think they'd be very reluctant to trade Dal Cole as well. I just don't see either of those two guys going. I mean, those are their two guys that are pretty prime, and they got to they still have to restock that defense. They might lose Boychuk in the off season, so they've got to be prepared for that. Reinhart, it could play there for 10 or 12 years. There's no way they're playing here.
Yeah, I agree with that. So to end today's show, and how we're going to end the rest of the shows just for a little while, not every day. If we forget this, some days I'm sure, and some days we won't have time. But we're going to do this real quick today. We're going to run the lottery simulator, just for the heck of it, to see where things would come out, and we're going to keep track of it and see how accurate Hockey Buzz's lottery simulator will be. So we have, right now there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Well, obviously there's 15 teams in this, right?
14
I
teams.
didn't have to count that. I'm an idiot. But yeah, there's 16 teams that make the playoffs. So there's 14 teams in the lottery simulator, and let's run the simulator now. So, I just have to throw this up there because this is too funny. The winner of the lottery simulator today is the Toronto Maple Leafs. All right, they get the first pick. Here's the draft order. Buffalo with number 2, Edmonton 3, Carolina 4. And so on. So
I feel safe to say that the Toronto Maple Leafs would be proud to select Connor McDavid of the Erie Otters.
There you go. So in the first lottery simulator for HockeyBuzz.com this year, we get the Maple Leafs. So we will do this again and, see how things go. But, yeah, I just had to run the simulator. Great show. Remember, you can catch Kevin at USA Today. You got to check out his stuff. There's just amazing article after amazing article right now. And as is per normal, you can see Russ Cohen. Well, you can see him right there. You can hear him on NHL on XM on the weekends.
And I'm working on an article for you too.
Oh, good. That's good news. Not to pressure you or anything like that.
No.
What the hell's wrong with you, man? I'm just kidding. So so Russ is there, and it's funny. I was listening to Prospects Radio this weekend, and it felt like you were. I didn't know quite what you were doing. You were doing the Oilers, right? But
yeah.
But as I'm driving along, I thought you were doing a special on players or on prospects who were related to players who had already played in the NHL, because you went through like 3 in a row. I'm like, that would be a good special, like a
called Bloodlines.
You should do a show just based on siblings and nephews and. Anyway, all right, and then Mike you can find on Hockey Buzz, of course. So, and you can also find Russ on Sportsology, which is a fantastic site. Remember the Buzz, it is just hockey. We'll be back tomorrow. Talk to you soon.